The story takes place in Gotham City, 1981. Arthur Fleck, Joaquin Phoenix, works as a clown for hire for ha-has. He suffers from severe depression himself, but finds solace in performing for others and making people laugh. He's been tasked with promoting a store by dancing and waving a sign around. On one such occasion, a group of punk teenagers steals the sign, forcing Arthur to pursue them into an alley. They smash the sign against his face and then kick him mercilessly while he's down. Gotham City is struggling with crime, unemployment, and poverty in this era. Arthur sees a social worker about his medication and ongoing mental health issues. A small child looks at Arthur on the bus ride home. He makes amusing faces at the boy, but his mother tells him to leave him alone. Arthur begins to laugh uncontrollably and hysterically. When his mother confronts him, he hands her a card explaining that he has a mental condition that causes him to laugh in this manner. Arthur returns home to a high-rise apartment complex with his ailing mother, Penny, Frances Conroy. They sit down after dinner to watch a TV talk show hosted by Murray Franklin, Robert De Niro. Arthur fantasizes about appearing on the show and capturing Murray's attention. Arthur charms the audience and Murray in his fantasy by telling them that he looks after his mother. Murray connects with Arthur and invites him up on stage in front of everyone to share a familial embrace. Penny used to work for Thomas Wayne, Brett Cullen, and is obsessed with the millionaire, who she is currently writing to in order to improve their living situation. After hearing about the mugging, Arthur's co-worker Randall, Glenn Fleshler, gives him a gun for protection. Because firearms are prohibited at work, Arthur is both hesitant and relieved to receive such a gift, but he soon gains confidence after receiving the weapon. Soon after, he is confronted by his cold and unfeeling boss, who chastises him for losing the sign and deducts the cost from his pay. Arthur only responds with a bitter smile. Arthur meets and falls for one of his neighbors, Sophie Demond, a single mother, Zazie Beetz. She speaks politely to him about issues to which he can relate. However, in his attempt to make an impression on her, he appears awkward and strange in her presence. He spends the day following her at one point. Later, she stops by his apartment and asks if he was following her, to which he admits, but she doesn't seem bothered. He invites her to his upcoming stand-up comedy show. She is hesitant, but his charm and sense of humor win her over. Einstein are floating up to get together with. He invites her to a stand-up comedy show at which he will be performing. She is hesitant at first, but his charm and sense of humor win her over. Arthur watches comedians perform to gain an understanding of the craft, but he feels more awkward and out of place because his exaggerated laughter is not genuine. Arthur attends his performance at the comedy club. His anxiety consumes him, and as a coping mechanism, he finds himself laughing so hard that he can barely speak. He then launches into his routine, which isn't particularly amusing. Einsteiner Uplodov. This gives him the comfort he needs to keep joking, despite his inner turmoil. Later, Arthur visits a children's hospital to entertain the patients as a clown. He brought his gun, which he drops on the floor. Arthur's boss later chastises him for this. Arthur begs his boss for a second chance, but he refuses and fires him on the spot. To top it all off, Randall accuses Arthur of having obtained the gun on his own. Arthur notices 3 drunk young Wall Street types working for Wayne Enterprises harassing a woman on the subway train ride home from Ha-and-Ha's full clown costume. Arthur begins to laugh unintentionally, attracting the attention of the men, while the woman wisely flees the car. Before they begin to beat Arthur, the men mock him and his laughter. Arthur fights back in self-defense, but they band together and relentlessly beat him down. Arthur then pulls out his gun and shoots 2 of them in self-defense before following the last guy out of the train and murdering him on the stairs. Arthur withdraws into a nearby public men's room, stunned by what he has just done. He finds a force rising within him after a moment of frantic contemplation, and he begins to dance by himself. At this point, he recognizes himself in the dirty mirror as a battered, smeared, but powerful clown and begins to embrace it. He hides the gun and returns to the apartment building, where he first meets and kisses Sophie. The news of the 3 murders spreads, with some viewing it as a targeted attack on the wealthy, while others applaud the act. Thomas Wayne speaks up and condemns it, referring to the lower classes as clowns, a symbol they readily embrace. Arthur cleans out his locker at Ha-Ha's the next day, but not before confronting Randall about betraying him and breaking the time-punching machine. He then walks away, exhilarated and liberated. According to news reports, clown rioters are causing havoc in the city while condemning the more affluent. Arthur realizes he has inadvertently caused this and begins to see his true potential, which makes him ecstatic. Arthur later discovers one of Penny's letters to Thomas, indicating that he is Thomas's son. Arthur visits Wayne Manor and meets young Bruce Wayne, Dante Pereira Olson. He sticks his hands through the gate and forces Bruce to smile after performing a magic trick for him, realizing deep within that they may or may not be brothers. However, Alfred Douglas Hodge arrives and tells Arthur to leave. Arthur brings up his mother and her relationship with Thomas. Alfred claims he remembers Penny, but she lied to him. Arthur attacks Alfred through the bars and nearly strangles him, but he notices Bruce watching. Arthur then takes control of himself and flees the Wayne property. That evening, Arthur runs into Thomas at a public art theater performance. Arthur enters the theater, disguised as an usher. He follows Thomas Wayne into a men's room and confronts him about the possibility of him being his father. Arthur mentions Penny, whom Thomas recalls. While Thomas admits that Penny used to work for him as part of his housekeeping staff, he believes she was delusional and that Arthur cannot be his son. Thomas also claims Penny never told Arthur he was adopted, which Arthur strongly denies, before bursting out laughing in Thomas's face. Unaware of Arthur's condition, Thomas becomes defensive and punches him in the face, before throwing him out of the building. In a fit of depression and longing, Arthur returns home and tortures himself by slamming his head on the refrigerator. The next day, 2 police detectives, Burke, Shea Wigham, and Garrity, Bill Camp, go to Arthur's apartment to question him about the subway murders, because they heard the suspect was wearing clown makeup and Arthur had lost his job the day before. Arthur denies any wrongdoing and orders the detectives to leave. Penny becomes ill and is hospitalized not long after. Sophie sits next to Arthur as he cares for his mother. Arthur notices that Murray's TV show is playing a clip from his stand-up routine in the hospital, but he is disappointed to see that Murray only played it to mock Arthur. A representative for Murray's show later calls Arthur. Arthur reluctantly accepts an invitation to appear as a guest. Arthur decides to commit suicide in front of the live audience after studying other interviews on the comedy show, believing it will make them laugh. In search of hard evidence, Arthur visits Arkham Asylum and speaks with Carl, Brian Tyree Henry, a clerk who has a file on Penny. When Carl refuses to give Arthur the information he seeks, Arthur grabs the file and flees to read it. Once away, Arthur opens the documents and reads them, discovering that Thomas was telling the truth, according to the documents. The truth is that Penny adopted Arthur as a baby after finding him abandoned, and she abused him, tying him to a radiator and beating him alongside her abusive boyfriend. Arthur was mentioned in the file as having a head injury, which is most likely what caused his laughing condition. When Arthur returns to the hospital, he tells Penny that he thought his life was a tragedy, but now he realizes it's a fucking comedy. He suffocates Penny to death with that. Arthur returns home and enters Sophie's apartment. She recognizes him and begs him to leave for the sake of her daughter. Arthur asks if she's ever had a really bad day, to which she responds that she doesn't even know who he is. This reveals that every other scene involving Sophie was all in Arthur's head. Arthur, broken and frustrated, apologizes for his intrusion and storms out of Sophie's apartment. Arthur begins to prepare for his appearance on Murray's show by painting his face white. Randall and another former co-worker, a dwarf named Gary, pay him a visit in his apartment, Lee Gill. They express their condolences after learning of Penny's death, but Randall then mentions Burke and Garrity visiting their apartments to question them about the subway murders. Arthur realizes Randall is only trying to use him to cover his own butt, and he snaps, stabbing Randall twice in the face before smashing his head against the wall. Gary, terrified, questions Arthur's actions and begs to be let go. Einstein are uploading up to get together with. Gary tries to open Arthur's door, but is unable to do so due to his height. He requests that Arthur open the door for him, to which Arthur immediately agrees, pausing briefly to thank Gary for being the only person in his life who was kind to him. Einstein are uploading up to get together with. Arthur then dyes his hair green, dons clown makeup, and dresses in a burgundy suit. He then dances down the stairwells, completely immersed in his insanity and carefree lifestyle. Burke and Garrity come across Arthur dancing in the street and arrest him. They chase Arthur into the subway train, where dozens of other Gotham citizens have dressed up as clowns in response to the murders. Arthur hides his face behind a clown mask he steals from a protester, inadvertently starting a brawl in the train cars. When the detectives are pursuing Arthur, a clown gets in their way, and Burke accidentally shoots him dead when they wrestle with his gun. The clowns drag the detectives out of the subway and begin beating them mercilessly, allowing Arthur to flee through the swarming police forces. Arthur meets Murray and his agent Jean at the TV station, Marc Maron. Before continuing, Arthur requests that Murray introduce him as Joker, as Murray did when playing his clip. Murray asks Arthur if his clown makeup has any political motivations, to which Arthur responds, "That is not something I believe in. I have no faith in anything." While waiting to be introduced, Arthur notices Murray playing a video of a struggling Arthur attempting to tell a joke. This changes Arthur's mind and plans, and he dances out into the spotlight. As the show begins, Arthur exits. He awkwardly tells Murray a joke that he finds amusing because of its dark humor, but no one else does. Arthur continues by admitting to the subway murders after being confronted with this. Murray and the audience gradually realize Arthur is dead serious. Arthur claims that the audience only cares about the victims because Thomas Wayne spoke on their behalf, but that anyone else would be ignored and walked over. Murray and the audience become more enraged with Arthur, but so does he. Murray scolds Arthur, which leads to Arthur snapping and telling another joke while grinning gleefully. What do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons and treats him like trash, he wonders, only for Murray to cut him off before calling the cops. Einstein are plotting up to get together with. The audience flees in terror, and the murder is broadcast live on the radio. For the first time in his life, Arthur laughs genuinely. After hearing what Arthur did, rioting citizens dressed as clowns have taken over Gotham. The Waynes emerge from a movie theater to find the streets in chaos. Thomas leads his wife, Martha, Carrie Louise Putrello, and Bruce into an alley, but a clown follows them and tells Thomas that he is getting what he deserves, using a punchline from Arthur's Murray Franklin show. He then shoots Thomas and Martha in front of Bruce. Meanwhile, Arthur has been apprehended and is being detained by police. Arthur laughs gleefully as he looks out the window and sees the devastation and chaos he has caused. The clowns in the ambulance then crash into the car, killing the cops and releasing Arthur, who is injured and unconscious. When Arthur awakens, he is surrounded by a horde of cheering mobsters in clown masks. The rioters then applaud Arthur as he stands on a car, embracing their admiration now that he has received the recognition he has long sought. He dances to their applause, before pausing to notice that his nose is bleeding profusely. He then grins and spreads the blood across his upper lip before standing before them, elevated like a god. Arthur is eventually imprisoned in Arkham Asylum. After telling this story, he laughs and imagines a young Bruce standing over his parents in the alley. Arthur laughs again, realizing that he has, in a way, transformed Bruce into himself. He meets a new social worker, April Grace, and tries to tell her a joke, but she doesn't understand it. A few minutes later, Arthur exits the room, leaving a trail of bloody footprints behind him before being pursued by orderlies. Please subscribe my channel. Thanks for watching.